Hello students. Today we are going to start with the measures undertaken by the government for the industrial development. So the documents that were prepared was IPR 1948, Industrial Regulation and Development Act 1951 and IPR 1956. That was the initial documents prepared for the industrial development. So what is this IPR? IPR 1948. IPR means Industrial Policy Resolution. So this was set up in 1948 and it was implemented since 6th April. The features basically included classification of industries into mainly four categories. The first one was kept for public industries exclusively, and they were treated as the strategic industries. Strategic industries means the most important and crucial industries like your atomic power, railways, airways, arms and ammunitions. So these were the basically four important strategic public industries. So that was kept exclusively for public. Then comes the second category, that is key and basic industries. Those industries on which the development of the economy exclusively depends upon. For the development of these industries, public sector took the initiative. I mean, it was owned by public sector, but the industries which were owned by private people, private sector, they were, if they were established prior to the independence or if they were already established, so they were allowed to continue production in the key and basic industries. I mean, there was no restriction on the already set up industries, but new industries were not allowed to set up the key and basic industries under the private ownership. Then comes your fourth category, that is important industrial industries, that included your consumer goods, capital goods, which were allowed to operate in the private sector. And the fourth category was other corporate, others, that is owned by cooperatives and private. I mean, both were allowed. If the cooperatives were wanted to produce something, so they were allowed that also, and private sector was exclusively given the rights to produce those goods. The second feature was the inward looking policy of foreign trade, that is import substitution and no exports as such. Export promotion. I'm so sorry, export promotion. So, focus was on import substitution. The third feature for this was role of SSI. I mean, the role of SSI, that is small scale industries, were uh, observed and that they were given due importance. Now, let's take up the second document, that is Industries Development and Regulation Act. This was named as 1951, but it came in operation from 8th May 1952. The main features of this was regulation of investment, that is whether the investments are made by private sector, public sector, or whether the investment is made in the backward areas or no, already developed areas. So all these was controlled and regulated. Second was protection to given SSI, that is small scale industries were given due protection so that they may not be exploited. Next is prevention of monopoly and concentration of ownership of industries. That is to prevent the monopoly. That is, if a rich person owns something, he can make more money out of it and can become more richer and thus can enjoy the power of it. So this is an example I am giving you. So the same here, if an industry is there, which is big industry, large industry, and if they are already operating in a particular production, so they can set up new industries, and this will lead to monopoly rights. That means he will be the only one. He will try to discourage the competition from the private sectors and other firms. So he will see all the ways and means to stop entering the firms into the market. So that was to be prevented. Next is balanced regional development. That is, the each and every region was given due importance, and for that they needed a proper developmental regime in which each and every region can be developed at equal pace. So for that, if the industries wanted to set up in the backward areas or the uh, poor areas or those regions where are not no industries are there, so they were allowed and given easy license and all. Next document I'll be taking up is IPR 1956. Under this IPR 1956, the industries were classified into three main categories: Schedule A industry, Schedule B industry, and Schedule C industry. Schedule A industry were exclusively for the public sector, under which 17 sectors were kept. That means they were exclusively given the rights to operate in the 17 centers, and that was public sector. I mean, no private was allowed to operate in these sectors. But uh, out of this 17, four were kept exclusively for monopoly, and rest of the 13, if any private sector is already operating in producing those goods, they were allowed to produce, and new entrants were restricted. Schedule B industry basically was open for both and public and private. So 12 industries were there under this category, and they were acting as mutual complementary. That means they were helping in the form of public-private partnership. Schedule C industry included all the rest of the industries and were allowed to operated by the private sector. But there was a regulation and control on these private sectors so that they may not lead to any kind of exploitation, any kind of monopoly, any kind of this concentration in a particular region to enjoy the power of it. So that was avoided, and for that there was a regulation and control by the government time to time. So the next feature of this is industrial license. So industrial license was essential for the establishment of new industry. It was allowed for the expansion of already existing industries, and license was easy for the industry, those who wanted to set up in the backward areas. So these industrial license prepared was in such a way so that the easy license can be given to those industries which are interested in to develop the backward areas. To support the industrial licensing system, government framed certain laws, certain acts that included one is your Industrial Development Regulation Act, which was enacted in 1951, as I've already discussed. The second one was MRTP Act, that is Monopolies Restrictive Trade Practices, which was framed in 1969 and came into force in 1970. FARA, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, established in 1973. So these were the various laws and acts which was framed to support the licensing system and to regulate the foreign exchange in the country. Next was the focus on small scale industries. Government also focused on the small scale industries. Why? Because small scale industries were able to give more employment opportunities to the local people. That means they were basically labor intensive industries, so they were given due importance. And the second purpose was to reduce inequality. So keeping that in mind, small scale industries were given, and initially a small scale industry was treated with the investment of 5 lakh. But later on, this limit of investment was raised to 10 lakh in 1977, then 60 lakh in 1991, and then in 2000, the limit of investment for the small scale sector increased to 1 crore. So those industries which were having the fixed capital or fixed assets up to these limits, they were treated as small scale industries. So keeping this thing in mind, the later on the importance was felt more. Then the small scale industries was renamed in 2006 as MSME, that is micro, small, medium enterprises. This was done under the MSMED Act. For this, after framing the MSME Act, MSMED, the policy of investment was totally changed. Now they defined on the basis of the sales turnover of each and every firm. So micro was treated as those industries which had the sales up to 5 crore. Then small scale industries from 5 to 75 crores of sales turnover is there, then they are treated as small scale industries. And for the medium industries, it was 75 to 250 crore sales. So this definition came up in the year 2018 for micro, small and medium. So with this, I conclude this video, and we'll be taking up more about the role of small scale industries in the next video. Thank you.